Hey guys, welcome back to the channel and more Birthright coverage here as we work our way through the remaining Voss realms. Today we're moving on to some of the Awnshegh realms. First up, the Manticore's domain, and we'll cover the Manticore as an Awnshegh in a separate video, but let's jump in here. So until about a year ago, a few people considered the Manticore, which counts as a level 14 fighter, more than a crazed Awnshegh bent on destruction of yet another realm. Now it appears the ex-paladin turned Awnshegh has begun to grasp power in the domain that bears his name. So the alignment of the domain itself is actually considered neutral good, although the Manticore lawful evil. Detailed fully in the Blood Enemies source book. Again, we'll cover the Manticore a little bit more detail. But it's basically one of the most weird and kind of like enigmatic Awnshegh that we have amongst the whole bunch. So, and again, this is one where it isn't like necessarily like kind of like an ancient evil, more like the Gorgon. This is actually like one that's kind of like in development still, so things are changing. So anyone familiar with the Manticore's sad history would know that Kandar came to southern Bosgard and transformed into an Awnshegh because of his lack of faith and the machinations of the Magian, another Awnshegh. He had the opportunity to become a regent of a small domain despite his hideous appearance, but chose to wallow in self-pity instead. Now, though, tired of taking blame for all the evil happening around him, he's finally chosen to recognize his birthright and take control of the land around him. So the Manticore's domain is not a large one. We got 4 provinces, mostly minimal settlement, although Morins is at level 4. You can kind of see some of the law, temple, and guild and source layouts there. So the evil wizard Yurei, level 8, and Azrai, neutral evil, small bloodline there, does control most of the law within the realm, but the Manticore is starting to challenge him against that. The temple situation, another order of the one true church of Vosgard, exists within the Manticore's domain. Its regent, the venerable Petrov Dlinskar, another level 8 priest here, small bloodline and also chaotic evil, refuses to take sides in the Manticore versus Yurei battle his church has actually suffered during the conflict. Now, interestingly, the wizard also controls a few trade guilds and land, selling herbs and a few rare magical components to those who will pay his prices, but the Order of the Moon Guild has begun to expand influence within the realm as well, so you got another level of conflict there. And then again, sources, once Yurei contented himself with destroying any wizard daring enough to enter the Manticore's domain, but he spent the last year building up his own power, including creating several source holdings. Now the provinces, again, Yurei once secretly ruled all the provinces, but now controls only Morins, the capital. The Manticore rules Madrik. Both Aerosmith and Okati remain uncontrolled. Now there's 2 contenders for overall regency here, right? We got the Manticore and then the wizard Yurei. And that's a tough one too if players were adventuring in here. Obviously, like the Manticore is like the known evil, but then again, you're dealing with an evil wizard as well. So, you know, which evil do you really combat if you had to choose, right? Yurei, one of only a few successful Voss wizards, has learned to dissemble at an early age. Learning magic where and when he could, he disguised his powers from his own kindred, fearing, rightly so, that they would turn him over to the temple's mercies if they caught him experimenting with true magic. Yurei traveled occasionally in the Southlands, where magical ability is revered instead of feared, and his quick mind grasps the complicated processes inconceivable to most others. By the time he married Nichelle, level 6 thief, a small tainted bloodline there, also neutral evil, he had risen in rank until only 8 persons seemed to stand between him and rulership of the domain. Now, with his wife's help, he did manage to eliminate much of the competition and become the heir apparent just as the Manticore arrived. Publicly, he blames the Manticore for robbing him of his right to rulership, but privately, he does thank the gods for sending Kandar to the land when they did. Until recently, Yurei carefully manipulated the Manticore and secretly ruled the land using fear of the Awnshegh as a club against his rivals. He played upon Kandar's morose and self-destructive nature, sending occasional armies against him both to stir the Manticore to action and to prove to the realm's subjects that they needed Yurei to protect them from the Awnshegh. So, as we continue on, but Kandar, the Manticore grew wise. This became apparent when he captured Derek Gwinski, level 10 thief, halfling, small bloodline there, after Yurei tricked the regent of the Order of the Moon into the Manticore's clutches. Instead of killing the halfling bandit, Kandar questioned him instead, showing for the first time in years an interest in the land outside of his lair. Hearing Derek's tales and knowing something of Yuri's nature, Manticore quickly pieced together the puzzle and realized that Yuri, his supposed ally, was using him as a boogeyman against the populace, basically, to keep the populace terrified. Whether something decent remains in the Manticore's twisted heart or he simply feels a need for vengeance, he's decided to make Yuri pay for that treachery. So he made a deal with Derek, convincing the halfling to part with his single law holding, transferring it to the Manticore. Then, as Yuri tried to strengthen his hold on the magic of the land, the two reduced many of the wizard's other holdings. So, we can see multiple levels of internal conflict going on there. The strengths. Yuri has his magical powers and natural cunning and his wife's thief abilities to fall back on. He also has the rumors and legends of many years to scare away people from supporting the Manticore, and he has the innocuous image of a courtier to deflect many would-be rivals. Even though his secrets have begun to unravel, he does remain a master tail spinner and could come out on top in this massive struggle here. That would be one, too, where, again, if the players are caught kind of adventuring in here and maybe are deciding to help out the Manticore or just not on the side of this wizard, they would hopefully start piecing together clues, but then also work to sort of unmask him more publicly and take away that support base. But, of course, allying with an Awnshegh potentially has its own risks, of course. Now, aside from his impressive natural abilities and warrior's knowledge, the Manticore has little going for him. Life under Yuri's rule has not been good for most people in the domain, but few believe Kandar offers anything better. Fighting an uphill battle against his falsely earned evil reputation, the Manticore will have to impress the boss of the region before they flock to his banner. But then, looking at the weaknesses here, if it became public knowledge that Yuri is a practitioner of true magic, that should seem perhaps something, a way to set that up, essentially, would be the way to go to unmask him, right? Like, make it a public, force him into a spot where he has to publicly do that. The loyalty of the realm and the troops would immediately fall. Already a less than inspiring figure, basically he's kind of cultivated that, typical coward type image. The only reason he can manipulate the warriors of the realm is because they believe he speaks for a stronger, more impressive leader. Aside from the obvious, the Manticore has only one major weakness, and that's basically his own nihilistic perspective and tendencies. When the desire for vengeance against Yuri burns away, what will he be left with? His sometime ally, Derek, does his best to cheer the Manticore and prompt him to action, but Kandar has spent so much time alone and engaging in self-loathing that he may not be able to maintain that focus for long. So we have that as a setback there. Now, lieutenants. So Yuri's only lieutenant is his wife, as to be expected. She often rules or speaks in his stead. When he departed to create source holdings, she oversaw the management of the realm, and since that time period coincided with the Manticore's rise from inactivity and his attack on Yuri's holdings, she does have a less than stellar record as a substitute regent. Also, while the Manticore seems to have allied himself with Derek, he has no lieutenants and he needs one badly. Even those who look to Kandar as a regent fear his Awnshegh nature greatly, and the Manticore can only go so far without a human or a humanoid representative. So, of course, a daring spot and a deadly one, perhaps, for players to get sucked up into. So, current plans. Yuri doesn't recognize the Manticore as much of a threat. Already he's begun to talk up the creature's recent actions as the plot of some usurper trying to bring down what remains of the nobility in the land. Since this rumor parallels Yuri's own activities of years past, it's easy to make it sound believable because it really happened. Yuri hopes he'll be able to crush support for the Manticore without lifting, basically causing military action to be taken or even using his magic because he doesn't want to expose himself. Now, on the other hand, the Manticore's plan is pretty simple. Kill Yuri. The Manticore's planning goes no further than that. If he could challenge the wizard to single combat and end it there, he'd do so, which he'd very likely easily accomplish. But Kandar knows from experience that Yuri would never agree to such a thing. At Derek's prompting, he has begun to raise support among those persecuted by Yuri in hopes that this bid for regency won't last long. The Manticore sees rulership as a means to an end, nothing more. So then, on the military side, Yuri, through intermediaries, still controls most of the military might in the domain, although it's really not much. Much of his army died or dispersed after a recent battle with the Manticore, but a few loyal troops remain. And as such, it's not insignificant, but it's also not so big right now that would be threatening the neighboring realms. But we got 3 units of Voss infantry and a unit of Voss scouts. Using the Manticore's name, but his own resources, Derek has managed to muster 2 units of mercenary irregulars in hopes of defending their holdings from military attack, but really that's a losing battle there. They might be able to kind of trade, but then the Ure would still have some units available too. So it's going to take a little bit more than that. All right, continuing on with a description of the realm. As we mentioned earlier, it is a small realm carved out by the fear most Voss have of the terrible Awnshegh. So the Manticore's domain survives as a buffer state between the Raven and Velinoye, and we'll see that in the map here in just a moment. Now, the capital, since the rift manifested between Ure and the Manticore, the Awnshegh has ceased visiting the capital city of Morins and remains in Madrick. Ure has stationed one of his remaining infantry units in the capital city, which lies on the western edge of the province of the same name, to defend just in case the Manticore attacks, and to keep a watch on the worried populace. A small city, the capital of the realm, wouldn't survive a mass exodus. The Manticore's lair, the part of the city once frequented by the Awnshegh, does appear to be abandoned, and that could be a base of operations potentially for some PCs adventuring there, especially if they're trying to act as agents of the Manticore, or at least not working alongside, as opposed to maybe just being allied with, if they're trying to take down Ure. The modest forest of Madrick province once housed a small army with orders to watch the Manticore and attack him occasionally as part of Ure's plan for manipulating him, but it's recently been turned into the Manticore's forest court. Derek, the guildmaster, runs a small open-air town amid the trees, and the Manticore visits occasionally when he's sure he can contain his madness and hunger in an attempt to inspire his few existing forces. Other sites: the Blood of Belinic Cathedral, located in central Morins, was once one of the largest shrines to the war god in Vosgard. Time and the tempestuous nature of the realm have destroyed much of its grandeur, but the somewhat dilapidated church remains holy to all orders of the one true church of Vosgard. The temple regent, the venerable Petrov Dlinskar, wrestles daily with his loyalties. He dislikes the slimy, cowardly Ure and will not throw the temple's full weight behind the counselor of the realm, but he does find it difficult to support a monster on the other hand as well. And again, fun bit here as far as the role playing and choices that players would have to make here. It's really choosing between two different evils. Or, again, you go a third route and try and take them all on. But anyway, as a result, both factions have occasionally pillaged the temple for funds and supplies, leaving the cathedral in its current state. Dlinskar must do something soon if he doesn't want the one true church of Vosgard in the Manticore's domain to become a disgrace to its patron. And also maybe just to not have other religions gain a foothold as well, if that were even possible. Other important NPCs: the province of Aerosmith still conceals the existence of Morita Greenfingers, which here we see a couple different sort of like multi-classing basically, so also level 7 wizard, so pretty potent there, among other things, but also chaotic good, so a half-elven herbalist and wizard with an uncanny talent for growing and harvesting plants. Some say she has a latent bloodline, while others believe she's simply blessed by the gods. However, since Marita takes after her father, an elf of Kumbane, that seems unlikely. Now, she did appear in the Manticore's domain just after Kandar. She has helped those peasants who suffered from the Manticore's and Ure's predations in the realm, but she hasn't taken an active hand in politics one way or the other. Some say she, like Ure, has established an herb trade with people outside of the Manticore's realm, perhaps working through Derek. Few have ever seen the ruddy-faced, brown-haired elf personally, however, and those who receive her services seem unwilling or perhaps unable to reveal her exact whereabouts, or would be wise not to. Now, last but not least, love getting into these DM secrets because this is some fertile ground for adventuring. Over the last few years, all of Yuri's plans have begun crashing down around him. His pet, Awnshegh, has woken from his self-destructive stupor and has basically turned against him. His only allies seem far away and unwilling to commit tangible aid. His people, constantly frightened by his own tales and rumors of the Manticore's ferocity, have lost the courage to defend the land from Kandar. Ure seems ready to stew in his own juice, but the scheming wizard has not given up, and he's got several plans going on. So 2 of his most powerful allies are the Magian and the White Witch, which is interesting given the distance of the White Witch to the Voss realms. So even before Ure came to power, he supplied them with magical herbs and components they needed for their most exotic and powerful spells. It is possible Yurei supplied the Magian with the components he needed to cast his Bloodline Corruption spell. Again, we'll get into that in Blood Enemies, but that's what was cast on Kandar, which turned him into an Awnshegh. Yurei is calling in old debts. Within a few weeks, Awnshegh hunters and powerful assassins may show up in the Manticore's domain, hunting for the Awnshegh's blood. And that could, be where the PCs are maybe even initially contracted, but then they start learning about more that's going on in the realm. Anyway, they will not care who gets in their way, in the way of their quest, and may choose to begin eliminating the Manticore's support network, starting with the forest town of Madrick and Derek's Guilders. But again, that could be one where maybe it's slightly altered, or the PCs do catch wind of that and maybe pose as also hunters to just figure out what's going on. Or initially they start on this path, but then realize, well, there's other evils afoot as well. So interesting way of getting that going too. And the lure for PCs ideally to hunt down a Awnshegh should be pretty strong. But this kind of indicates that they'd be already in service of perhaps another Awnshegh, or just not so savory to begin with. Moving on, though, Yurei may have convinced the Magian to enchant a small white wand made from a thigh bone of a former wizard of Runo. It is said with a few charges of the Bloodline Corruption spell, and deliver the item to Yurei through intermediaries. If this is true, the wizard of the Manticore's domain may have the power to completely corrupt or destroy a few of the most powerful heroes in the area too, so that could be something to be on the lookout for. If this is true, the Bone Wand must be wrested away at any cost, and that could be a worthy quest in and of itself. So maybe these can also be kind of chained together, that PCs slowly hear rumors of that. Maybe they intercept some part of the supply chain here that would be, or transport network to this. Maybe they even just come across it and gradually learn what it does and hope to maybe destroy it or get it out of the realm entirely as well. Of course, there'd be all kinds of bad guys after it to perhaps retrieve it as well. Wouldn't it be funny, too, to turn that against its intended recipient and turn down Yurei? But again, would the PCs risk maybe creating another Awnshegh at the risk of, or just for the goal of trying to sort of stabilize the realm, too? Also, here, moving on. Recent rumors speak of an alliance between the Raven and the Manticore. While no such alliance currently exists, Yurei would love nothing more than the Raven's support. If things go sour for the wizard, he may attempt to bargain with the Raven, offering the Manticore's bloodline as a price for saving Yurei from the collapse of his own plans. Like most of Osgard, the Raven was duped by Yurei's deceit. He believes that the savage Manticore rules the realm on his northern border and has been content to expand southward and eastward until now. If he learns that a mere mortal wizard stands in his way of the north, the Raven may simply just annex the realm, and the Raven is definitely on a much different power level, certainly than Yurei, and even the Manticore itself. And he would just worry about the Manticore's reaction later, if anything. If Yurei faces defeat in his war to reestablish control of the land, he must not be allowed to communicate with the Raven, or the realm or the realm will truly be lost. So, yeah. So, and as we can see here, just wanted to make sure we get the map in, because again, we're going to be covering the Raven's realm next. Obviously, a much, much larger realm. Manticore's domain there is fairly small, though it does have access to the sea, which should be noted there. But yeah, so if the Raven does learn that he's been kind of duped for the time being, he definitely has the power and resources to just kind of march on through there and take some areas away. So, a lot of interesting options here. So again, we haven't really done much of that. We're here lately where we've seen like actual Awnshegh realms, right? It's been a minute since we've looked at some of those with the Brechts and certainly the Anawirans that we're more familiar with. So here we actually have Awnshegh realms butting up against each other, and just some of the just general conflicts that we see with all the Voss realms. But here then we were adding this other layer of an Awnshegh, multiple ones in fact, being in such close proximity. So it does present some interesting options for trying to adventure in the Manticore's realm and really kind of learning what is going on there. But let us know, guys, if you have actually adventured in and around the Manticore's realm. Have you taken on the Manticore himself? Have you dealt with Yurei? How would you incorporate that into a campaign? Love to hear your guys' ideas. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll have more Birthright content for you soon.